The merits of Venerable Mahakasyapa and the legacy of Buddha's teachings. Hello everyone, today, we're going to dive into a super interesting piece of Buddhist literature. The opening scene of this record feels just like a video game. Imagine a monk appearing on stage looking completely disheveled, dressed in rags, looking like a total outcast. But here's the twist as the story unfolds. He ends up deconstructing the biggest myths we encounter in our spiritual practice one by one. This isn't just a story about an ancient practitioner. It's a brilliant dialogue that transcends time and hits right at the core of modern spiritual practice. Ready? Let's jump in. The contrast, appearance versus essence. The story begins with a powerful contrast. Picture this, the well-honored one, the Buddha, is preaching to hundreds of people in a magnificent, solemn setting. Suddenly, Venerable Kasyapa returns after a long period of solitary retreat. He looks rough, long hair, unkempt beard, and clothes that are literally falling apart. The followers present were unimpressed. They felt insulted, thinking, how can this man show up looking like that? It's totally inappropriate for such a sacred gathering. But guess what? The Buddha has full-time wisdom. He saw straight through Kasyapa's exterior. He knew that Kasyapa hadn't just mastered the Tripitaka, the scriptures, but that his internal spiritual realization was already on the same level as the Buddha himself. The dramatic seed sharing. Then comes the cinematic moment. When the Buddha realized everyone was mainly looking down on Kasyapa, he did something that made everyone's jaw drop. Instead of getting angry, he publicly praised Kasyapa and said, Kasyapa, come here, come sit on this seat with me. You have to understand this wasn't just a polite gesture. By doing this, the Buddha was announcing to the world that Kasyapa had mastered every level of meditative absorption jhana, from the first to the fourth, and even the four formless realms. He had mastered the same supernatural transformations, becoming big or small, surviving water and fire exactly like the Buddha. The Buddha was essentially stamping his seal of approval on Kasyapa as his spiritual equal. A political thriller from a past life. Why did the Buddha hold this ragged monk in such high regard? To explain this to the stunned disciples, the Buddha hit the rewind button and told a story from a past life in a peaceful kingdom called Varanasi. Imagine a royal court filled with toxic energy. The old king had 500 arrogant, corrupt ministers who were constantly causing trouble. Luckily, the king had one super teammate, the minister Shenzhen, victorious treasury. Shenzhen was wise, steady, kind, and always saw the big picture. You could say the peace and prosperity of the entire nation rested solely on his shoulders. The plot thickens. When war loomed with a neighbor, Shenzhen used his high-level diplomacy to resolve the conflict effortlessly, turning enemies into friends. When the king finally had a son in his old age, he knew his time was short. Looking at his baby prince and then at those 500 scheming ministers, he knew he had to act. The king called Shenzhen and, in front of everyone, praised him immensely. On his deathbed, he entrusted the protection of the prince and the entire kingdom to this loyal minister. Needless to say, Shenzhen didn't disappoint. He protected the legacy perfectly. The core concept, continuity of karma. The Buddha wasn't just telling a bedtime story. He was revealing a core Buddhist concept, the continuity of karma. He revealed that the brilliant minister Shenzhen was Kasyapa in a past life, and the king who entrusted the kingdom to him was the Buddha himself. This proves that their bond is a deep-seated trust that spans lifetimes. The Buddha praised him in front of the crowd in a past life, and he did the exact same thing in this life. This kind of trust isn't based on looking fancy today. It's built on the merits and morality accumulated over eons. Part 2. Debunking modern spiritual myths. In the second half of this material, the time shifts. A modern Dharma master uses this classic story to debunk common misconceptions in practice. Myth number 1. Do we need an asantyeya, countless years of time to perfect the precepts? Some people say it takes an astronomical amount of time just to get the rules right. This scares many practitioners into giving up. The debunk. The master is blunt. He says this claim exists nowhere in the actual scriptures. He reminds us that when we speak the Dharma, every word must be based on the sutras. If there's no scriptural basis, it's just personal delusion. Spreading your own daydreams as Dharma is a serious spiritual offense. Myth number 2. Will the Pure Land disappear? Does Amitabha have an expiration date? People worry that if they aren't enlightened yet, they might get kicked out of the Pure Land if Amitabha's contract expires. The debunk, the master points out that Amitabha literally means infinite life. How can infinite have an expiration date? Once you reach that realm, you are guided by list mentors like Avalokitesvara. Even if your initial faith is shaky, the environment guarantees your eventual enlightenment. If you're worrying about VAR expiration, it just means you haven't fully trusted the process yet. Myth number 3. Does the Buddha have sales targets KPIs? Some wonder if the Buddha must save exactly 9 billion beings before he can clock out and enter nirvana. The debunk, liberation isn't a numbers game. Whether the Buddha can help you depends entirely on karmic affinity. If you have the connection and the heart to learn, he's there. If you don't, even a Buddha can force it. The Buddhas save beings out of compassion, not to hit a quota. Viewing the Dharma through a corporate KPI lens is a total misunderstanding of the Buddha's intent. Conclusion, your responsibility today. The master ends with a heartfelt call to action. We are the ones who must inherit the Buddha's last will and testament so that he no longer has to worry about the beings of this era. This isn't just a job for monks and nuns. Even as lay people, if you have a bodhisattva heart, you have the responsibility to protect this original flavor of wisdom and stop it from being distorted by modern delusions. A final thought. Back then, the Buddha was able to see past appearances and hand his most precious lineage to a man in rags. In today's world, filled with distractions and myths, who is willing to stand up and keep this pure, unpolluted wisdom alive? I hope you find your own answer. See you next time.